Just as a reminder, this is an open meeting, and so the meeting recording will be published to the council's website as soon as possible after this meeting. But we can get started. So today we have a full agenda. We're going to just take care of some morning announcements, and we have Nancy and Mike here to kick things off for us. We'll have to vote to adopt the meeting minutes from November 7th. So if you haven't had a chance to look those over, now would be a good time to pop over to the council's website. I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. We have a member spotlight today with Daphne Ultima Johnson. Excited to hear from her. I believe Secretary Addix or someone from the Department of Agriculture will be sharing a little bit about the LEAF program with us. And we have the Maryland State Ethics Commission here to provide your annual training for FSRC members. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nancy to provide our welcome.
Well, good morning, and thank you for joining the first FSRC meeting of the new year. I'd like to say Happy New Year. I think it's more interesting 2025 than happy so far, but we'll see what happens. I would like to thank the council members. We've been off to a great start this year with our committee work and our recommendation work, our work groups, to develop our recommendations for this year. And so thank you very much for your commitment. And I know that we have at least one new member that I can see the picture on my little screen, but I think we're supposed to have two this meeting. Thank you also to all the guests. I know it's difficult to make these meetings, but your input is really important. And I would encourage you to also attend the committee meetings, and you can find the committee schedule on our website, as well as to engage with the work groups, again, for the recommendations. You all have expertise that we need. None of us are experts on every aspect of this area, and it's a great learning experience, networking experience, and together we can really make some difference. So with that said, my only final thank you is to the MDEM staff. As Dr. Karki said, we are so fortunate to have you, and I really truly mean that. But we are really fortunate to have you as our lead agency who takes care of us. So with that, do you want me to turn it over to Mike?
Not yet. We have to do a roll call
Okay.
for this official. Thank you, Nancy, for this official FSRC meeting. And I, of course, neglected to introduce myself as well. As usual, my name is Annika Lefebvre. I'm the Food Systems Resilience Coordinator with the Maryland Department of Emergency Management. So I hope you'll bear with me while I run through a quick roll call. Please just say here when your name gets called. Jesse Albright.
Here.
Thank you. Daphne, I saw. Good morning, Daphne. Emily
morning.
Bauer.
I'm here.
Emily Bauer.
Yep, I'm here.
Hey. Good morning. Heather Bruskin.
Good morning.
Morning. Beth Brewster.
I'm here.
Hi, Beth. Delegate Charcudian. Naya Chejne.
Good morning. I'm here.
Morning. Dr. Escobar, we know, is here. Senator Hester. Nick Hargrove. LaMonica Jones.
Good morning. I'm here.
Good morning. Dr. Karki, we saw. Good morning, Dr. Karki. Meg Kimmel. Lisa Lackenmeyer.
I'm here.
Hi, Lisa. Taylor Lefebvre.
Here.
Dr. Lansing.
Here.
Hi, Dr. Lansing. Grace Leatherman.
Here.
Thank you. Joe Liu.
Good morning.
Good morning. Steve McHenry. Joe Malone.
Here. Good morning.
Morning. Nancy is here. And do we have Michelle Caruso here for Lisa Orr?
I'm here.
Hi, Michelle. Mark Powell. Dr. Range.
Good morning.
Good morning. Carl Schlegel. Teresa Stahl.
Here.
Hi, Teresa. We have Mike Hinson here for Secretary Strickland and Diana Taylor. We saw as well. Good morning, Diana. Do we have Leslie Sessom Parks here? And Shannon McDonald.
Here.
Hey, Shannon. Okay. Thank you, everyone. Nancy, we have a quorum for when that matters. But now I'm going to introduce our newest members to the FSRC. We have Carl Schlegel, who I think is not here presently, but he is with the Maryland Farm Bureau, and we're excited to have him. Hi, Meg, I see you in the chat. Lisa Orr is here representing the Frederick County Food Council. We have Michelle standing in for her today. And we have Dr. Enrique Nelson Escobar, who is here on behalf of the UMES. Oh, hi, Carl, I see you. Here on behalf of the UMES Small Farms Program. So we're excited to have Dr. Escobar. Naya Chejne is here with the Montgomery County Food Council. And LaMonica Jones is our newest member from Maryland Hunger Solutions. So welcome to all of the new members. And hi, good morning, Secretary Addix. I see you in the chat too. Okay, so the next council meeting is not until April 17th. We pushed it back in the month of April so that we can provide a more in-depth debrief on the Maryland General Assembly's 2025 session. So that should be in your calendar. I'm sorry for, I'm sure, the many emails you received this morning with calendar updates. It is a flawed system that sends too many emails, so I'm very sorry about that. We have several committee meetings coming up this spring. The committees are mostly looking at recommendations development for the next couple months, so we encourage you to get involved, and please feel free to reach out to me by email if you need access to those meetings or have any questions. Okay, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mike to provide some opening remarks.
Good morning, everybody, and thanks for giving me just a minute today to speak with you. First, I want to open up by thanking Nancy for recognizing MDEM staff and their work with this group. We really do care genuinely about the mission of this council, and it's really nice to hear that is being seen by others through good service from the staff members. And I'll personally give a shout out to Annika for leading that effort in almost all ways. She's been fantastic, and looking forward to doing more great work with you all. But really why I'm here today is because Annika got a couple requests from various folks a couple weeks ago when we initially had a lot of interruptions, we'll call it, in the possibility of federal funding. And so there were a couple requests for us to kind of just give an update on that. For anybody who's been following that, you know, essentially there was a lot of change, and then everything has kind of been stopped through injunction, and we are kind of in a holding pattern at this point. So theoretically, we're basically back to the baseline of where we were to some extent, with a couple caveats. The real situation here remains dynamic. So while I wish I had a very in-depth report where I could give you all the answers, I think you all know that that's just not possible right now. It's constantly a moving target. And we're going to have to see what comes out of some of this litigation, and then also what executive orders and memos just kind of fade away, if you will, and aren't followed up through on. So just like I said, a very dynamic situation. So as such, there's really no new information to share with you, other than you should expect more changes to come, whether it be from funding amounts, funding sources, funding requirements, and we will absolutely do our best to keep you all updated on any of those that we think are pertinent to the mission areas of the folks who regularly attend these calls. As such, MDEM has created a planning group that is gathering information as it becomes available to try and assess impacts so that we can share those things with you. And I don't want to monopolize too much time up front. As we heard Annika say at the beginning of this is a packed agenda. But I did just want to take like a minute or two to kind of open the floor. We have a couple folks with us from that planning group here at MDEM on the call to take some notes, and basically we want to give an opportunity for any of you to express any impacts you've already seen on your operations, any impacts you would expect to see based off of some of the changes that we think are coming or are likely to come, or any general concerns you have around the food system in Maryland. And obviously, I'm just bringing this up kind of out of the blue to you all, so I don't expect you to have all your ideas fully ready to share. So you can also email later on any ideas to Annika, and she'll filter them to the group as well. But just real quick, I'll open the floor if anyone just wants to hit some highlight points so that those folks from the planning group can gather that information and take it under consideration when undergoing their planning scenarios and assessments. And I see we have Meg with a hand raised. Go ahead, Meg.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Just a couple of things that we are tracking very carefully at the Maryland Food Bank. Obviously, we're looking at funding that is frozen, specifically CCC funding that is under review at the USDA, and that funds part of the TFAP program here in Maryland, and it also funds part of LFPA and the future of LFPA. So those are very significant funding sources and generate a lot of food that then moves across, into and out and across our state. So those are the things that we're concerned about. We are also watching out of school time meals because we produce meals as other organizations do. Not as significant a financial risk for us in any way, shape, or form, but also that's kind of the third thing we're looking at. And we are just for informational purposes for this group, we are deploying a survey in the next day or two out of our network of, we work with about close to 800 community-based organizations across the state to understand the impact of potential fears about immigration and how that's impacting people's ability or willingness to go out to food distribution events. So we'll be happy to share the results of that survey when we have the information back. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Excellent, thank you. Serge?
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. Good morning, everyone. My name is Serge Thomas, and I'm the Strategic Support Specialist for the Mid-Atlantic Food Resilience and Access Coalition. It's a mouthful. MAFRAC is good enough. And we operate out of the DMV specifically. And the issues we're tracking are the impact of the administration's immigration policies. It's causing a lot of our partners with food banks and hunger relief organizations in Virginia to reassess as to what they can and can't do. Doubtless, this might be affecting our partners in Montgomery County, Maryland, Prince George's County, Maryland, and other affiliated partners throughout the state. So we're tracking the immigration issue, and we're also tracking, at least on my end as a policy advocate, it's been withdrawn for the Senate Finance Committee. It's Senate Bill 232, which would have basically tried to tailor the payments for SNAP fraud to the limitations of the budget. But again, that bill has been withdrawn, and it's something that we and others for the Montgomery Food Council had opposed, and we're just waiting on what else could the government do when it comes to that issue. So those are the two big issues that we are basically tracking at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Serge. Those are great points. Appreciate that. Grace?
Just noting, we have grants from a number of different departments within the Department of Agriculture on the national level and also the EPA. We put in a lot of reimbursements before things froze, and those have still not moved. So while we may technically, the freeze may be over, effectively on the ground, particularly with the USDA, things remain frozen.
Yeah, that is a great point. Really appreciate you. Excuse me. Really appreciate you bringing that up. From a policy level, things are on hold, but from an operational, things are on hold as far as the changes. But from an operational level, we are still in a middle ground where we're yet to see. And I think that also may be highly dependent upon department, even program within department. So it'd be interesting to see how we can track that and see if and when there is movement. But appreciate that input. I see Joseph.
Good morning. In addition to the other things that have been raised, we are once again looking at a end to the CR and a federal funding crisis. And so we're looking at March 14th. We think the politics with the debt limit and the pace of EOs is making the minority far less willing to work with the majority on this. So we feel this threat's a little more real than the last time. And we've been drawing up contingencies to create new distribution sites in census tracts with high concentrations of lower wage federal employees, especially. And we still haven't been able to get a sense of how extensive the rifts are because everybody's getting these administrative leaves. Most of them seem to be with pay, but we are very concerned about, maybe not the GS 12s and up, but the GS 5s and 6s and 7s who, if they miss a paycheck, will need support.
Excellent point. Appreciate that. And that ties in, I think I read an article that as of yesterday, there were over 20,000 folks who had accepted that federal resignation offer, whatever that may end up being, which leads to its own possible down the road problem about whether or not all those folks are going to be able to find gainful employment and their needs mixed in with the folks that you mentioned who are currently on various forms of paid administrative leave. But when does that end and how do those folks, kind of move on and recover from that? But excellent points. All right. Anybody else who wanted to voice something? Oh, good morning, Diana. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
I'm well,
just want to add on the food shortage and also the difficulty of people being able to purchase food has become real.
Very true. Very true. Any other comments? Like I said, I know I'm putting you all on the spot, so I do just want to reiterate that you can send any comments to Annika. Also, I believe Vanessa from that MDEM planning group put another form of contact in the chat, so you can also get to us that way. And of course, you can always reach out to me. I'm here for that as well. So with that, I'll hand it back to Annika. And just once again, want to say thanks to everybody. And we here at MDEM genuinely appreciate all the work that you do and the time that you take to do it. So have a good rest of your meeting.
Thanks, Mike. And thank you, everyone. Okay, Nancy, it is time for us to adopt the meeting minutes from November 7th.
All right. So Annika has put the link. You'll see the link on the website. It was also sent to you earlier. So I don't know if any of the council members have any corrections or edits to the minutes. If you do, if you could just raise your hand. Okay. Seeing no one raising a point, could someone please make a motion to accept the minutes? One of the council members.
I make a motion that we accept the minutes.
Thank you, Diana. Could someone second it, please?
I'll second that, Nancy.
Thank you, Heather. All members of the council voting, could you raise your hands or somehow signify aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, if you could put your hands down, please. Are there any opposing votes? Thank you. We've accepted the November 7th minutes. Back to you, Annika.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Nancy and everyone. And I did just want to highlight for you all the timeline for this year's annual report, which you're going to see a lot over the next couple of months. Just as a reminder, the draft recommendations for state agency review are, the deadline to submit them to MDEM is the end of April. So the Environment and Production and Distribution and Access committees will be busy over the next couple months trying to put together those first drafts of the recommendations. Please reach out to me or to the committee chairs if you have any questions or want to get involved with those work groups. Any questions about the report at this time? All right. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Daphne to share a little bit about herself. Daphne, I have your slides ready if that is helpful for you.
Yeah, that's fine. It will be quick. I mean, 5 minutes so we can kind of keep going.
Okay.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you for the opportunity, honestly, to do this, choose me as a spotlight. I've been on the board for probably 2 years now. It's been very enlightening and it's been a great learning opportunity for me. So I describe myself as a public health journalist, and you'll see why I say that, as I talk about, my background and what the work that I'm doing now. So generally, that's what I am. I'm a public health journalist, but I'm also a dietitian. I'm also an educator as well as an advocate. So I began, you can go, Annika, you can go to the next slide. So my journey as a public health journalist is somewhat interesting, but I always like to say my personal inspiration and my early life created a backdrop for who I am and the type of issues that I work on. So I was born in Haiti and I spent the first decade of my life there. And I was always fascinated, especially when I came to this country, I was fascinated by how my family members lived well into their 90s, and some of them actually reaching 102. I think 104 was the highest one. So, and why that was fascinating to me is because despite being what we consider the poorest country in the hemisphere, they thrive well. And I realized why they thrive. It was because of community and eating of the land. And so this realization really has always motivated and inspired my nutrition work and public health work in the community that I work with. So that said, after I graduated from GW with my master's of public health, I began working as an epidemiologist, in infectious disease at the Maryland State Health Department. After a few years, I wanted to dabble into global health, and I started working on HIV/AIDS, specifically the Fogety AIDS grant with Dr. Blattner, co-founder of the AIDS virus at the University of Maryland, while earning my MBA there. During that time, I was traveling quite a bit to Africa, probably about 50 to 60% of the time, was traveling, doing some work there, building capacity. But the requirements of that job changed where I had to live there. So I shifted a little bit and within the University of Maryland still, overseeing the breast and colorectal cancer patient navigation program with Dr. Baquet. Eventually after that, I returned to the state health department as a senior epidemiologist working in chronic disease. And I was there for doing in that role probably for about 9-10 years. And it probably was at that time, traveling to the 23 jurisdictions in Maryland and talking to directors and really being in a community, it was a turning point for me because I always wanted to be a dietitian, family and everything it just didn't happen. But I realized there was a gap in community nutrition education because the professionals that were, doing the work didn't reflect or relate to the communities that they serve. If you're familiar with dietetics, less than 3% of registered dietitian are brown, and then let alone male. So I just said, let's just take the leap of faith. So that inspired me to return to school, and that basically has shaped my career path for the past 11 years. You can move on, Anika. So that said, I am a senior program officer at the Center for Rural Future. In that capacity, I do research, I do science translation, and I do advocacy. Specifically, our focus area is Meatless Monday. I work on Meatless Monday and sustainable healthy diets. Meatless Monday itself is an entry point. It's an entry approach to sustainable diets. And if you have any questions, I can delve into that ourselves. But the center itself has been around since that actually public health initiative started. And our goal is to basically provide science. Like they can't say anything without the science. So which is pretty impressive. So I also do food policy work where we bridge health and sustainability together. Specifically for the last 2 years, I've been focused more or less on the DGAs and how that itself is related to sustainability, red and processed meat, and, advocating for that, doing comments, et cetera, and testimonies. I also do some research on shifting diets for climate and health. And so that's basically where we get to balance, your personal and planetary health needs. So some of the key projects I actually worked on within, we were working and continue to work on within the past year or two is a climate label study where we exploring how climate labels influence sustainable food choices. That was a study that was done in our dining, JHU dining areas. We're doing consumer survey where we're trying to understand public health attitudes on dietary shifts. That program, we're working with Dr. Andrew Torn-Lyman, who is a faculty and researcher at Hopkins. And we're also working on a resource center, a global resource center that provide educational tool on sustainable eating. Outside of that, I have some additional roles. I am an adjunct faculty at Howard University, the Department of Nutritional Sciences. In addition to that, I do some freelance, dietetic works where I support rehab and long-term care facilities, as well as, dietitian on staff for some obesity research trials. But those actually probably additional roles probably allow me not only to stay current on the research, but actually give me that connection, between where we are as researcher, we publish the work, and how the community see it, which allows for us to educate differently, right? Because what we see, what we write is not really what people understand as evidence as they can do. And also they're not implemented in the way they are. So that is me in a nutshell. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Daphne. Did anyone have any questions for Daphne? Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much, Daphne. It was so great to hear about your background. And with that, we have Secretary Addix here, who I believe is going to share a little bit about the LEAF program. Secretary Addix, I don't know if you had slides you wanted to share or...
I do have slides. Susan from our team has joined, I believe, if she has access to sharing slides.
She should.
Yes, I am here.
Excellent. We'll see if that works out. As you can see, compromised with technology here with a phone in a car, parked, but in a car nonetheless. Thank you for the time. I'll be efficient with time here. We, over the last 2 years, have been meeting with members of the agricultural community, members of the environmental community, conservation community, research community, and listening to some really, really great ideas, and also being presented with the challenges that we have as a broader community in engaging agriculture in being the solution and not just being seen in some circles as the problem when it comes to conservation, when it comes to air quality, water quality, soil health, etc. And something that was very clear to me is that I've not met a farmer who is interested in being a force of bad. They're all interested in being forces of good. And some of that is because it's part of their ethos, but frankly, some of that is because it doesn't pay to be a bad actor. If you're focusing on soil health, your yield will be better, and you'll need fewer inputs and fertilizers to make your crops grow. So why wouldn't folks be in favor of soil health, just as an example? So we began to talk about our various programs, and it became clear to us that farmers may interact with MDA in one capacity. Maybe they're all required to submit nutrient management plans, but beyond that, maybe they don't engage with MDA. Or if they do, maybe it's through our marketing program to get involved in our certified local farm and fish program to sell to institutions. Or maybe it's through our ag cost share program, or maybe, it's through one of our other programs. But we're not seeing a lot of cross engagement across all of those. So enter this new concept, and Susan, we can go to the next slide. What LEAF does, and LEAF is the Leaders in Environmentally Engaged Farming, it begins to link all of these various programs together in a way that will, as we're hearing, incentivize farmers to do even more. One of the challenges that we've seen is that there is a bifurcation between farmers and conservation generally. And that is because over the years we've seen the two sides maybe paint each other in ways that is not always the most friendly. But the path forward is we have to work together. And there are plenty of farmers and plenty of conservation groups that are already following that model. If we bring everybody together, we start agreeing to practices that we think will be better for water quality, air, etc. We also broaden that a bit to include things that we think are good for the food system. So not only growing more food, but growing more food and then storing more food, packaging more food, rendering more food into ways that can be sustained throughout the year. Now we're starting to take advantage of the incredible market that exists around us. And it will also help to wag the dog in terms of we're making it a priority. Maybe we can reduce some of the rules and regulations to make it even easier to do. So if you look at some of these kind of cogs on the side, the widgets on the side, LEAF will be inclusive not only of the standard conservation practices, but LEAF will include community best practices. So we know that farming sometimes smells, farming sometimes is noisy, and so there are some practices that farmers can employ that will make the tension a bit less between neighbors and farmers. And so all of these practices, when they are kind of agreed upon and kind of certified within our program, with input of industry, with input of conservation, with input of academic and researchers, these will be assigned point values. And I'll give you an example of we agree as a community that if you're farming along a stream bank, it would be helpful, it would be wise to have some kind of a riparian buffer there in between your farming activity, which can disrupt the soil, and the stream, because the idea would be we want to make sure we're keeping as much of the soil and nutrient, et cetera, on the farm rather than flowing off. It may actually, though, be more important to have a larger buffer in some parts of the state or a different type of buffer in some parts of the state. And so through LEAF, we'll be able to rank and score and prioritize. So it's not just a buffer is a buffer is a buffer and it counts, but maybe you need a bigger buffer. And so you will be incentivized more points in the LEAF program to plant a larger buffer. You don't have to do it. If you don't have to do it, you don't want to do it, that's fine. But this is what the researchers are recommending. If you want to go from a X point value to a higher point value, and we will have thresholds, then we would encourage farmers to do it. The program is, and Susan, we can jump to the next slide. It's largely based on the concept of LEED building code standards. So the Green Building Council came together with researchers and community members, et cetera, and created a series of different practices that a builder could employ to build a green building. Now, if you employ all of them, perhaps you're LEED Platinum. If you employ some of them, perhaps you're just LEED certified. More, LEED Bronze, Silver, Gold. So it becomes an incentive over time. We have seen that sometimes those come with tax breaks. Some communities will offer tax breaks the higher your LEED certification. We're looking at doing the same type of thing through our programming as well. So we're pretty excited about it. Susan, we can jump to the next slide. So this gives you a basic idea of the framework. So first and foremost, designing practices. That is the stage we will enter soon. And I should zoom back and say where we are now is this is in concept stage. There is a piece of legislation, the Governor's Bay Legacy Act. LEAF is tucked into that. And if that bill, when that bill passes, I should say, and we'd love your support on that, the program will now be officially written in statute, and we could begin fleshing it out. So that will be enabling legislation to allow us to move forward. Where are we practically right now? We are meeting with groups. So our team, Elizabeth Hoffman, Alicia Mulkey, Hans Schmidt, are meeting with a variety of stakeholder groups right now. If we're trying to reach everybody over time, if anybody is feeling like they'd like to engage, please reach out to me, please reach out to our team, and we would love to connect and have a deep discussion about it, because it's helping inform us with designing the practices. The next step will be valuing and prioritizing the various practices, and this is meant to be utterly flexible. So we keep hearing questions, well, what about horse farms? Well, yes, it will apply to horse farms. What about poultry? Yep. What about vegetable? Yep. There will be practices that are universal, and there will be practices that are specific to a type of an industry. And it's not just top down, like we're sitting in a room figuring out what these practices are that will be assigned values and then put up as best practices. This is interactive and engaging. We're talking with everybody we can, and we're coming up with we're hearing some really great innovative practices and ideas that we hadn't thought of. So it may not just be a hard practice, where you build a building to put manure in, for example. It could be the use of innovative products that are green fertilizers and have micronutrients, and that have been studied to over time reduce nitrogen input and phosphorus and whatever. So it could be the use of something that research has shown seems to be working. These will evolve over time. Then we come to implementation, where farms would, after they choose these practices, implement the practices and report back to us. There will be an advisor from MDA. There will be community engagement and support from other organizations as well as we go through this to value and to help to inspect. Susan, we can go to the next slide. Part of this is we're going to verify it. Like, you're going to say you're doing this, we're going to assign some values to these. If you're going to earn the value of these practices, we're going to have to make sure that you're doing it. In most cases, that you're doing it and it's having an effect. In some of the newer practice cases, that you're doing it, that you're actually trying it and doing it. And I will say that when we get into community best practices, a practice could be the fact that you are engaging in research with an academic institution, 2-year, 4-year, whatever it might be. Maybe it's even, that you're engaging in student research at a high school level. The fact that you are engaging in research and engaging young folks, that's going to be assigned points. If you are a farmer that, as another example, that has, 150 acres, and there are, as we know, there's a land access issue, and we've got folks who are looking for land to grow things. If you, a farmer, engage in a 5-year relationship with a new beginner farmer, and whether it's leasing the land or whether it's mentoring them in leasing the land, well, we think that that's a practice we would like to encourage. So there will be potentially points assigned to that. So we're thinking more holistically than just transactional. You put in a grass waterway and, we check the box and make sure that you did it. We're looking for more than that. Moving forward, we'll certify. So you will accrue points through your practices and then be certified. These are subject to change: platinum, gold, silver, etc. And then, of course, promotion. We will annually be publishing lists and making a big deal out of folks that are in this program and are trying new things. It is, the big question then is incentives. we're building the program out, and as we're building it out, we're talking to farmers. What would encourage you? What would incentivize you to be engaged in a program like this? The feedback that we're getting from a lot of folks is the fact that you're doing this program. Well, that's heartening, but we know that's not going to be enough for everybody. We have floated ideas that, it's chicken and egg. First, we need the program, and then we can start talking about the different benefits. But maybe it's a tax break for folks who reach a certain level. Maybe it's prioritizing our other programs. So the higher your LEAF score, maybe the faster access or priority access you get to our max grants, our conservation grants. Or if you want to preserve your property, no LEAF score, you go through the full process. A very high LEAF score, maybe your application is prioritized. Maybe it's a partnership with banks so that the higher your LEAF score, the lower your rate. So we're working through all kinds of different scenarios and concepts, and we're open to a whole lot of ideas. I floated a concept that we had when I was speaking at the Future Harvest Conference, where maybe if you have a very high LEAF score, there are some permits that you will no longer need, or maybe the frequency of application and reapplication, renewal of those permits or licenses can extend the higher your LEAF score. Why? Because being LEAF certified and having a higher LEAF score means that you are a steward, right? This is kind of VIP of stewardship in the agricultural community. So, Susan, next slide. I think that was it. It is it. So I would be happy to take any questions, or we can leave it there.
Secretary Addix, there's just a question in the chat asking if there's any publicly available information outside of the bill text for the Chesapeake Bay Legacy Act available online right now.
I will check to see. I think up to this point, it's been presentations as we have been rolling through them. We did have a couple-hour rollout of this and lots of discussion. I think that presentation may be online, so you can check our newsroom on our website. But Annika, I'll send it back to you once we find a link. I will say it's living in this odd space where it's conceptualizing until there's statute language. So we've got a bill that's working right now, and we're very, very excited about getting that bill passed. And read the Bay Legacy Act. There are some really, 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 really positive things in there about our fisheries, about adding the first ever definition of regenerative practices when it comes to soil health and agriculture. We're the first or the second state to be doing something like that. There's access. There's a change that will allow Department of Natural Resources, who is our #1 holder of agricultural land in the state, to adjust their leasing program so that there'll be a more viable option for folks who want to grow food and don't have access to land. DNR has that land, so it's making their leasing more flexible.
Any other questions for Secretary Addix? Heather Bruskin says in the chat, thank you, Secretary Addix, for your leadership and engagement in the FSRC's efforts.
Appreciate that. We're collectively doing good work, so appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much, Secretary Addix. It's very exciting to hear about the LEAF program. And next we have Pansy Watson here with us, who is going to, hi Pansy, who's going to provide your training. Pansy, I have your slides, or you're welcome to share them as well.
I'll go ahead and share them on my end, so it's just easier to change them and move them forward.
Okay.
Let's see here. Here we go. Start that slideshow. Well, good morning. Thank you all for having me here today. And I know you're doing really important work, so thanks for letting me interject with all that just to talk about state ethics, which I know can probably seem a little bit dry. I'll try to keep it going though. Some of you probably had this training before because you all are wise enough to have us out regularly to do some reviews. And some of you may be seeing this for the first time. So I just want to remind you all that the main takeaway here is that we're really here for you. We're available during the week at any time. If you want to give us a call, ask us a question, if you need some help with something, we're available to talk with you through anything and give you the assistance that you need. So with that, I will introduce myself. My name is Pansy Watson. I'm Assistant Counsel at the State Ethics Commission. My primary role is to help with advice related to ethics, as well as working with local governments to make sure that their ethics laws match the state level ethics laws. And the purpose of this is, I hope obvious, that we keep a consistent ethical line throughout the state in everything that we do. And so I'm going to dive in here. First, I want to tell you a little bit, very briefly, about ourselves and why we do this. The State Ethics Commission is a 5-person commission. Those people are private citizens of the state of Maryland. They're selected by the governor, and they meet about 6 times a year to review issues that they need to approve or discuss that are significant. But a lot of informal issues come through our office. And so this commission is supported by full-time staff. I'm part of that staff. We do training, we answer the phone and answer your questions about whether or not you can accept a gift or whether or not something is going on that you need to tell us about. And we're here for you to help you with anything, any time of the year, not just during those 6 meetings of the year. And so we're here to help you avoid conflicts of interest or even the appearance of conflicts of interest. And that in turn assures the citizens of Maryland that we're really serving them, that we're really here doing the best that we can to work in our programs and in our councils and in our agencies to make the state a better place for them and not just for our personal interests. We also handle financial disclosure filing. So basically, that means the law is broken down into 2 main components: conflicts of interest and financial disclosures. Financial disclosures are just filling out a form. So if you have any questions about that, you're welcome to call our office. We're happy to help you with that if you are a filer. But even if you are not a filer, the conflicts of interest do apply to you and your day-to-day operations and the things that you do. So that's really what we're going to be focusing on in this presentation. And also, I want to say, if you have any questions, please feel free to interrupt me. I'm more than happy to pause and answer your question in that moment. So the first conflict of interest I'm going to touch on is called participation. Participation just means that you're prohibited from participating in a matter that comes before your council that it involves you or a qualifying relative. And so the way we break that down is a matter is really any kind of a business relationship. You know, let's say a company or a farmer comes to you to try to work something out, and you or a qualifying relative has an interest in that, then they may need to talk to somebody else on the council instead of you. So it doesn't look like there's any kind of bias or partiality going on. So really, it doesn't prevent them from working with FRSC. It doesn't prevent you from continuing to work on there, but it does mean that maybe in that specific instance, you would recuse yourself so that we make sure that there aren't any appearances of bias. And then, of course, a qualifying relative is really defined as the relatives that are closest to you. So that would be your sibling, your child, your parent, your spouse. One or more of these may be living in your home with you, so you might have shared financial interests. So that's why we hone in on those specific relatives. Now, sometimes, because we are concerned about appearances, we might extend that out a little bit. You know, if we know there's a very strong relationship between you and another party, and that party is trying to do some kind of business with the council, we may advise you to recuse yourself from that as well, just because we want to be sure that, you know, you're protected and the council is protected from any kind of, you know, scrutiny for being, you know, inappropriate in any shape or form, even if you're not. So really, that's the purpose of the law, is to protect you, to protect the agencies. Now, there are some exceptions. Really, the key one I want you to be aware of is the quorum exception. If recusing yourself from a matter creates a quorum problem and you guys can't do business, then you can participate. That is an exception to the participation rule. But what we ask you to do is to announce that conflict into the minutes, explain why you're participating despite that conflict so that there's full transparency with the public. Now, there are other exceptions related to your role. So, for example, if you are the only person who's authorized to act, then there's really no other option. You have to participate. But these are very, very rare. These are things like the governor vetoing legislation. Well, obviously, no one else has veto power. So even if he has a participation conflict, he gets to proceed to do his job. If you think something like that is at play, give us a call, but that's very unlikely. It's more likely to be a quorum issue. And in that case, proceed, but proceed publicly and transparently. So here's a couple examples of what participation issues tend to come up as. So let's say, the employer you work for, it would like to present a partnership opportunity to the council. You would not be able to join that discussion because you have a vested interest in that personally, right? Same thing with if your own business developed a system and you think it would be a great idea to recommend to the council. Well, here's what you need to be aware of. If you did recommend it, then you would be recused from, you've basically conflicted yourself out of any discussions related to the recycling systems that you might adopt, that you might encourage, whatever. So it really can create a barrier for you to participate in something that maybe you care deeply about. So you want to think carefully about whether or not it's worth it to make that suggestion and to involve your own business when it could mean you not being involved in the council matter altogether. Now, this is a good place where I like to point out that this is not something that is immoral, right? In private practice, we do this all the time. If you have a product or an idea or a business structure that you think is going to benefit another group, you're more than happy to share it because you are in this business, you're in this world because you care about these things, right? This is not something that you're doing because you're just, well, at least in this case anyway, you're not just trying to line your pocket, right? You care about these issues. You care about recycling in the environment and how this could benefit the community. But the public ethics law holds us to a different standard. We really are answering to the people of Maryland, and we don't want to make it look like we're in these positions to benefit ourselves. So that's why these standards can sometimes not always be obvious and why they can seem restrictive, but it's really to protect all of us. So that's participation. The next conflict I'm going to talk about is employment and financial interest. Before I jump into that, are there any quick questions about participation? Okay, I'm going to keep going. You can always ask me questions at the end too, or follow up with me after the fact. So employment and financial interest conflicts really just means for board members and council members that you can't be employed by or have a financial interest in an entity that your council regulates or is doing business with your council. Now, there are a couple exceptions to that that are important. First of all, you may have been appointed to the council because of your business interest or because of your employment interest. So obviously, that's a statutory exception. We want farmers and people in agriculture and environmental work to be on these councils so that they can contribute their voice. And so we can understand all the different issues that different components of this area face. So that's why we create these statutory exceptions so that you can participate. The other exception is if the conflict exists at the time that you're appointed, you just disclose it on that appointee exemption form that you filled in with your application. So if you are already, you already own a farm and you already have a working relationship with the council, you just want to disclose that so that it's clear that that conflict already existed. Everybody was aware of it when you were confirmed and became part of the council. So it's just really, again, another matter of transparency when these things do exist. So the third conflict is called post-employment. Post-employment is a little bit nuanced and it's very, very fact-based. But basically the gist of post-employment is that if you worked on a matter while you were with the council and then you moved to the other side of that matter and wanted to continue to work on it, you couldn't because you had previously represented the state. So think of it as switching teams in the middle of the game. We're not going to let you do that. You can work on new contracts with the council or the state. You can work on different contracts that you did not participate in when you were with the council, but you can't just switch sides and work on the same matter. And so there's not really a broad restriction here. It's not like, oh, you can't do anything related to, the food council for 1 year. No, it's really very matter specific. And it's for the length of that matter. So if it was only like a 6-month MOU, then you're only conflicted out for 6 months. If it's 5 years, you're conflicted out for 5 years, but only on that matter. You can certainly advance your career, move to another organization, do other work related to that organization, even if it involves the council, as long as it's not work you did while you were with the council. So I have an example here on the slide. It basically lays out, what I just described for the duration of the contract that you worked on for the state. You can't work on that contract when you go to the other side of the matter. And this one comes up in interesting ways. Very often, employees are very proactive and they come to us when they're in this process of negotiating new employment and they say, hey, what do you think of this? Can you, give me some advice about how to proceed? And we'll reach out and we'll ask about contracts and we'll ask about involvement to anybody who's involved in the council with you. But sometimes it's the employer themselves. So sometimes your new employer will reach out to us and say, hey, we're hiring this person who has worked very actively on these contracts and we want to know what we can or can't task them with. And so we'll give them that advice. So one way or another, it does come back to us. Sometimes that gets asked of me, but most employees are pretty transparent about this. You should just be aware of it. All right, so those were the first 3 big conflicts. If there are any questions, please feel free to pop up with them. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and proceed and talk about gifts. Okay, great. So gifts and gifts limitations. So generally speaking, you don't want to use your position to solicit gifts, right? That seems like, I think, a no-brainer. That would be inappropriate and that would look bad. But unsolicited gifts often come your way. And when we're talking about gifts, we should be clear here that we're not talking about personal gifts. We're not talking about gifts that you give each other as colleagues. And we're not talking about gifts that are from, family members or friends or have nothing to do with your role, right? We're talking about gifts from what we call controlled donors. So those are going to be vendors. Those are going to be people that your council regulates. Those are going to be lobbyists. Those are going to be community groups like the Maryland Association of Counties or the Maryland Municipal League. And those are all groups that have a vested interest in giving you a gift and calling your attention to themselves. So this is where you cannot accept the gifts unless they meet one of these exceptions here. And these exceptions are basically, is it just like swag, right? Like tote bags, hats, t-shirts, mugs. Those are considered nominal gifts. Typically, they're valued at $50 or less. We're not concerned about anything like that. Those are perfectly acceptable and they happen in the course of business all the time. Meals and beverages in the presence of a donor. You go to a conference, they have swag and they have food and they have drink and they're hosting this big thing. That's fine. You can accept those kinds of things as gifts and you can enjoy them. A lobbyist wants to talk to you about a bill, so they take you out to dinner. You may accept that meal and you may let them pay for it and hear what they have to say to you because they're there with you. And this is about, kind of doing business and encouraging activities that will benefit the council, right? Reasonable reimbursement for food, lodging, travel if you're speaking at events. So, there's a conference, they want you to come and talk about what the council is working on or maybe how a program was implemented, and they're happily cover your costs. Those are perfectly acceptable gifts, right? And same thing with ceremonial gifts or awards, maybe a successful project that you had in the community and you all want to celebrate and have a gift or an award, presented to you. That's great too. So we're really designing the exceptions around your ability to do business and connect with the community. We're trying not to prohibit that too much because obviously, gifts are something that are pretty common in private enterprise. It's a way we say thank you, call attention to ourselves, engage others. We don't want to prevent all of those positive things, but we do want to be careful about looking like we're just taking gifts left and right and not really doing our jobs. So, this is where we sort of draw the line, is with these exceptions. It's also important to know that sometimes the exceptions can be a little bit confusing or nuanced. So, for example, let's say you were asked to speak at an event. It's a ticketed event, and they offer you a ticket, and they offer your plus one a ticket. Well, the ticket can be considered reimbursement for your speaking, but the plus one would not be, unfortunately, because we have a pretty strict rule about taking tickets or cash or gift cards. So you would have to pay for your guest to attend the event, but you could accept the ticket for yourself. So this is where things can get a little bit in the weeds. And this is actually like the perfect thing to give us a call about. Like I said, we always try to keep at least one attorney staffed in the office so we can get on the phone with you when something like this happens. We can get you an answer very, very quickly and be like, yes, this is acceptable. Here are your limitations, or no, you're going to have to pay your own way into this event because that's what the rules say. And we'll be able to interpret that for you when something kind of, just unclear comes up, because it can be really confusing at times. So again, call us. We do answer the phone. Any questions about gifts before I move on? All right, great. All right, the next one is called prestige of office. Prestige really just means not using your resources or your influence for your own gain or for the gain of another. So you wouldn't want to use your role as counsel to maybe strong arm somebody into going along with something or giving you a gift, right? And you also really don't want to use your state resources inappropriately. So if you do have your own business, you don't want to be operating it using your state email. That would be considered using state resources inappropriately. So prestige issues really boil down to asking yourself if what you're doing is directly part of your job. And that's where you want to keep the focus. If you are obviously supposed to go out into the community and engage people and bring them on board with a plan or fundraise, well, that's not using your influence for your own benefit. That's really your job. And so that's appropriate. So that's where you want to sort of ask yourself, is this part of my job? What is my role? How does this look? This comes up very, very frequently for referrals and recommendations. As long as these are personal referrals and recommendations, you are free to make them. Just be sure if you're representing your agency that it's something that the entire council agrees with you on. So the entire council wants you to recommend a certain program and represent that the council supports this. Then of course, do it in that way as the voice of the council. But if it's just a personal recommendation, then keep it personal. You can certainly mention that you're part of the council as part of your biographical information, but don't use council letterhead. Don't throw your title around all over the place so that it looks like it's really the council's voice and not your own. And again, if this is not clear or if it seems kind of nuanced, we can walk you through it. We're happy to. But I think pretty much if you just stick with making personal recommendations and only making referrals and recommendations that the council approves when you're representing the council, you should be good. All right. So we're actually already to the last conflict, which is great. You guys can get some of your time back and work on some of your other issues. But really, confidential information just means that you cannot disclose or use confidential information that you get by virtue of being part of your council for your own economic benefit or the economic benefit of another. So if you all, for example, know that you have a program that's going to be incentivizing people in a certain way coming up, and you want to give somebody a heads up on that, you can't do that. It has to be public information before you could start sharing it. Otherwise, you're using confidential information to kind of give somebody an edge on competitors, and that wouldn't be all right. Same thing if you used it for your own benefit. You know, like if you left the council and decided your business was going to go after a certain grant or become part of a certain program because you knew it was coming up and it was a great opportunity. Well, again, that's using confidential information for your own economic benefit. Now, keep in mind that the state ethics law really focuses on money. And what are you doing with the money? Where's the money going? Whose pocket is that money going into? Confidential information is obviously about a lot more than that. As an attorney, I have to keep information confidential. It has nothing to do with economic benefits to myself. And you may come across similar things in your work. So this is a good place where I like to remind you that the state ethics law is really the floor. And your council bylaws can be stricter and can have more things in them that you need to be aware of when you're operating. And so these work together. And you might need to keep confidential information that isn't just about economic benefits. So be sure that you occasionally refresh yourself on what your bylaws are and what your limitations are so that you're acting completely ethically for your council and as a representative of the state. All right. Lastly, I want to talk briefly about retaliation. We do have a prohibition in the state ethics law against retaliation. There's obviously also a retaliation prohibition that's connected to the harassment rules that are generally in the state law. But specifically regarding ethics, if you have a concern about an ethics violation that you report, or if you are asked questions when we're investigating a matter and we ask you to help us out, have you seen this happen? How does this happen? And you're helping us out, you are protected from retaliation for participating in an ethics investigation in any way. For the most part, we keep these things very, very confidential. Until we have conclusive information, nothing is made public. Nobody has to confront a witness or an accuser until we know we have it all. But be aware that you are protected. You won't lose your position, be demoted, be harassed in some way because you have participated in an ethics investigation. Don't be afraid to reach out to us. And like I said, we answer the phone. Call us, reach out to us anytime. I don't remember if you all are financial disclosure filers or not. I don't think that most of you are, but if you are and you have financial disclosure questions, this is the time to call us. They're due April 30th. You have ample time to reach out to us and ask us any questions about filling out the forms, and we'll help you with that. But that's really dry stuff, and we don't need to go over forms for the presentation. So really just keep those conflicts in mind and know that we're here for you if you need anything from us. And my information is here as well if you prefer to contact me privately. Thank you all so much for your time. Yes, Enrique.
Is there a limit on the time of keeping the confidential information?
No, we usually keep the information completely confidential. If at some point the investigation becomes serious, then the person who is the party to the investigation will be made aware of who the accusers are. So you will not be kept confidential the whole time, but you will be kept confidential for a substantial amount of time and protected from retaliation if they do ever have to learn who you are.
What is substantial? 5 years, 2 years?
No, we don't have a time limit on it. It's really for the duration of the investigation. So if we investigate a matter and we have enough evidence without needing to involve anybody, we won't involve anybody. But if our investigation involves evidence from a witness, then that person is entitled to confront that witness. And that'll happen whenever we have enough information to make it happen. So usually a few months.
Thank you so much, Pansy. Any other questions for Pansy? Well, you have her email address here on this slide, and I'll be sending out a copy of the slides as well after the meeting.
Yes.
Thank you, Pansy. That was very helpful.
Great. Here's my email in the chat. Like I said, if you have any questions that maybe you didn't really, want to share with the group or have anything that comes up in the future, please feel free to email me and reach out.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are ahead of schedule, which is great. Hopefully we can give you some of your time back, which is not always the case for these meetings. Now we're going to dive into committee updates. Heather, can I put you on the spot and ask you to provide any updates with how things are going for communication and coordination?
Yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Heather Bruskin. I have the honor of chairing the Communication and Coordination Committee with incredible support from MDEM and CHHS. But we have been meeting every Monday at 1 p.m. to highlight a few key bills that have upcoming hearings that are directly intersecting with the food system. And so there's also an online tracker that is regularly maintained that tracks all the food related bills, whether it's direct or tangential connection to food. So there's certainly a lot more than the 4 each week that we highlight in our program that you all should be aware of. So I just want to make sure that you all know that these meetings continue throughout the General Assembly session. So we'll have about another month and a half of those. And we encourage not just Food Council members, but advocates and community partners from around the state to come because our goal is to certainly, wherever we can, raise your awareness of the bills that are under consideration in Annapolis and also create spaces to have facilitated dialogue and information sharing related to those bills because community engagement is really important in the legislative process. So if you have any bills that you don't see on the tracker that you think should be on the Food Council's radar, then please reach out to me or to Annika, and we will make sure that we spread the word. And so thanks again for all of you who are attending every week.
Thanks, Heather. And I put the legislative tracking spreadsheet that Heather mentioned in the chat for those who don't have it saved. I recommend that you go ahead and bookmark that because it's a very helpful resource. And the contractors that we work with from the Center for Health and Homeland Security update it on a daily basis. Thank you for that, Heather. Any questions for Heather? Okay, distribution and access. Diana and Meg, do you have anything that you want to share?
Good morning, everyone. From distribution and access, we're just working on our work groups and scheduling our first meetings so we can start focusing on our recommendations and how we're going to be moving forward. I also know that with the political climate that we're in now, distribution and access will probably be spending some time when certain things arise to discuss those and how it's going to affect the state of Maryland. Meg, do you have anything else to add to that?
I think I would underscore both of those points. And I think the only other thing I would point out to this council is that distribution and access has spent this year really looking at the words that are in the legislation, the legislative ask of this council. We have brought in experts. We've been on a really great learning journey and are really trying to focus our recommendations on what the legislation is asking for. So this feels like a year where we're making really strong progress. And just to underscore what Diana said, knowing that political climate that we're facing, the reality of food distribution and access in our state is really threatened right now. So this is another area that we'll pay close attention to. So yeah, we have a great process set up, and just again, thanks to Annika for all her support, helping get our work groups up and running. We should be in a great place to put some strong recommendations out in our annual report. Thank you.
And Meg, I just want to second that. We cannot do what we do if it was not for Annika. She's excellent. She's always on time, and she keeps us together.
Well, that's unnecessary, but thank you. And if anyone is
But we
not
keep
yet participating, well, thanks, Meg. If anyone's not yet participating in the Distribution and Access Committee and would like to get involved, you can reach out to me to be added to their calendar invites, or you can go on the council website and always access the meeting from there. The meeting on the 27th will be really informative for people who might be curious about the recommendations that Distribution and Access are working on, and you'll learn more about how to get involved then. Environment and production.
Hello, yes, I'm Stephanie Lansing for Environment and Production. And as the other group said, we've really been trying to think about the legislation that is out there right now and where are gaps in that legislation that we can, that lead to council, that lead to part of what our purview in the council. Let me see if I can share my screen because we have a lot of working groups. Let's see if it's gonna let me. We have a lot of working groups, and I want to make sure, and I can put this information in the chat as well, but I want to make sure that people, anyone can join our working groups and can be part of this, this work. So we had our first meeting for zoning and regulation barriers for producers. It was a really good meeting for that work group, and we have some kind of to-do items, and our next meeting is likely going to be one where we specifically ask some people to come in and give us input, the producers themselves, on what their insights are. What are the things that are specific barriers to them, to make sure that we get an inclusive understanding of what might be a regulation that would kind of zone in on that. And I know MDA is doing a lot of work on this. And so we're just trying to figure out where, as a council, we can support that work from MDA, but also think about things that we can do for the next legislative session. We also had a meeting about climate smart agriculture. And then we have 2 meetings taking place tomorrow. So if you are interested in being part of any of these work groups, just reach out to Annika and she can send you those. We have one for local food purchasing platforms on the 7th. And some of these are with distribution access as well. Let me just say that as well. And then we have on certification of Maryland foods from 3 to 4 tomorrow. So those are 2 meetings. And then agricultural labor is on the 10th. And we have our monthly meeting on the 13th on Thursday. It's always the 2nd Thursday of the month if anyone is interested in joining that meeting. And then we'll have a joint meeting with the work group with Distribution Access and Environment Production on February 18th, specifically on food date labeling and looking at what other states are doing and what we might want to think about for the next legislative session. So I don't know if this is a complete list, but it's at least the list that I have, and I will add it to the chat. But again, if you're interested in joining any of these meetings, just please, Annika has the links for these, but these are really the work groups that have formed during this. And then we're trying to work through the timeline because, again, Annika, the Food Council has these new sheets that we're supposed to fill out in terms of how we want to frame the recommendations so that they are all consistent and they provide the meat of the information that we need for putting it into the report. So right now we're still at the fact finding, but we're going to start moving into kind of filling out those sheets and understanding, what is the meat of the recommendation that we will then send out for distribution to the whole committee. So I'm happy to take any questions. Yes, and Annika will send out a full list of all of these things after the meeting. I'll put this in the chat just so people have it. But if you are interested, just let us know, and I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Lansing. And yes, so we have just scheduled the Distribution and Access Committee work groups this morning. So I will follow up with the full council, just the full list of dates. And you can reach out if you want to get involved in any of those. We already had some people respond that way for environment and production. So encouraging others to get involved. Any updates from council members in general? Shannon, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to put out there that the Maryland Department of Environment is currently trying to determine how folks would like to participate in the National Food Waste Prevention Week. I'll put a link to it in the chat. If you have any questions or ideas, please let me know. I'll put also my email in the chat as well, because we are trying to plan for this. It is in April, so we don't have a ton of time, but we have enough that I would love and encourage anyone to participate in any way, shape, or form that they think they may be able to.
Great. Thank you, Shannon. Anyone else?
I think I was going to do the same thing, but just really encourage for multiple counties to participate in that food prevention week. And hopefully we can, use the opportunity to, highlight a lot of the ongoing efforts to elevate food waste reduction across the state. And hopefully, the more counties that issue these proclamations this year will help to reinforce local and state level commitments. So as for Montgomery County, we will be working to secure a proclamation, and we'll be working closely with Heather and her team at the Office of Food Systems Resilience to do that. But just wanted to piggyback on what Shannon had shared.
Great. Thank you so much, Naya. Any other updates? I had one just for local food councils. If any of the local food councils would like to share any updates, you are welcome to do so now. I will share that the next Food Council collaborative meeting is going to be May 9th. That's following the Maryland General Assembly's session. So that's May 9th, that's Friday at 10 a.m. And that meeting is available on the council's website if anyone is interested in joining. Any local food council updates? Nancy, go ahead.
Realized I hadn't unmuted myself. I can share for the Eastern Shore that there's a number of efforts going on to form food councils throughout the shore, but that there will be a convening on March 18th and at Chesapeake College, and it's actually for the whole Eastern Shore, bringing together some speakers on the carrot tool and really trying to get people to look at focusing collaboratively. So I'll be happy to send some information if others would like to join. And we also would like to reach out to food councils in some of the other areas. We have some students working on information about sort of different statistics and how they've compared some of the counties on the shore with counties elsewhere in the country that have food councils, and provided information on 3 and 4 different types of models. So if any of you are interested in learning about that project, be happy to meet with you and have our students actually present on it.
Hey, Nancy. This is Pam Allen from the Eastern Shore.
Pam, I didn't know you were on.
I am, but
Pam's the queen of this
no.
meeting. So,
but I just wanted to add that Miss LaMonica Jones is actually our keynote speaker, and I believe she is now a member of this council. So just want to let people know that as well, as an incentive to come out and see us. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nancy. And yes, please share that information about the meeting on the 18th. And sounds like others are interested in discussing the carrot as well. Teresa, did you want to provide an update?
Yes, I just wanted to say that with County United Way, the Western Maryland Food Council received a Care First Blue Shield grant for place-based strategies for diabetes to put together 1,400 food boxes containing local food over the next 3 years at events that will bring local resources to that event. So it'll be food plus resources. So we're really excited about that. It's a continuation of a program called Nourishing Neighbors that happened over the last year in our county. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing that, Teresa. Any other updates from the local food councils? Okay, hearing none. We already heard member updates. So I think that is it for today's meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Annika, could I
Jesse.
stop? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm trying to still be active on the farm and so forth, and so I jumped out, but I just wanted to make the entire council aware, as we talk about, food security and food then insecurity. I think it's worth bringing to everybody's attention that the Baltimore Farmers Market is currently seeking new operators, and the city put out an RFP to the public on a very short timeline. It's only open, I think, for 30 days. It was published and then opened. It's available, I think, on the BDC's website and so forth. And I just think it's worthy to note that when we talk about, food distribution to, the largest metropolitan area and a direct market for a lot of Maryland farmers, it's critical where that goes from here. So I just wanted to make that, put it in everybody's purview. You can find that, like I said, on their website. If anybody has any questions and they'd like to reach out to me directly, my family's been attending that farmers market I think the market's been there for 48 years. I think we've been going for 46 years and so forth. So I just think it's worth noting that that could be a change, it could be a drastic change one way or another. So yeah.
Thank you so much, Jesse. Thank you for putting that on our radar. And Shannon put the link that you mentioned in the chat. Any other final thoughts?
Sorry if somebody had already mentioned it, because like I said, I was in and out a few times, but I just wanted to make people aware.
No, you were the only one who mentioned it. So thank you so much. We're glad you chimed in. Any other final thoughts before we adjourn? Okay, well, thank you all so much. I'm happy to give you a half an hour back and looking forward to the next meeting. I won't be there probably, but it's on April 17th. And please feel free to reach out regarding any other committee questions or council questions. And yep, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Annika.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Annika.